So it's something different for this week's first offer, and it's the Hunter versus the Akula, because these are both on a fabulous offer this week. Normally these things are easily over 4 million each, but this week you'll get the Hunter for 2.4 and the Akula for 2.7. There's even more discounts to be had if you've got the trade price. So how am I going to test these? Well, the best way I can think is to do some cargo sourcing. Wish me luck. So we'll start with the Hunter, which is based on the Apache, and it does look an awful lot like the Apache. It's a really cool looking thing. It's a two-seater and it's incredibly quick. It has decent weaponry as well. It has barrage missiles, which I find much more fun than homing. Not necessarily useful, but fun. So let's get started with this. So what I'm going to do, the reason I chose hangar land sourcing is because it's really easy to get the same mission. There are only a limited number of missions, so I figured if I just ran this for half an hour or so, I would be bound to get the same mission twice and I'd be able to do a direct comparison. So taking off in this thing, and the first thing you notice is how twitchy the handling is. It's not that it's bad, but it's very twitchy. It feels incredibly light, it feels incredibly agile, but it's not so much agile, it kind of leans towards twitchy. As we've already said, the speed on this thing is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if it's still the fastest helicopter in the game. I know it certainly was for a while. But one thing that is notable about both of these, but in particular the Hunter, is how quickly you can gain and lose height. You can really get high really quickly with this, and with the way it handles, it does support really steep dives quite well, which is actually quite useful if you're using it for things like sourcing. Now, one thing I will say, I know that these aren't the best vehicles to do the sourcing missions in. So before anyone tells me, I know the Raiju is the best vehicle for this. I also know that the way I'm doing my hangar is not the most efficient, but I'm not really into grinding at the moment because, well, that's not trying to say anything other than the fact that where I am in the game at the moment, I don't really need to earn any more money. So what I do is I just play the parts that I enjoy, and I don't worry about what I have to earn or whether I'm earning it in the most efficient way. So that said, let's get over here and deal with this mission. Now, as soon as we get here, you're going to see one of the big downsides to this particular vehicle. So as I've said, when it comes to combat, I've got a choice of homing or barrage missiles. I've also got bombs. I've also got a separate machine gun, but that can only be operated by the co-pilot, which is a bit of a shame. But the main issue with this is with those whacking great engines on the side that take a lot more damage than the rest of the vehicle. It is a little bit weak. It will take one explosive, but it won't take much gunfire. See, this is smoking already. It can take one rocket and that won't destroy it, but it will die not long after that. Just like that.
Okay. We do it the hard way.
Get back!
And now let's get the hell out of Dodge. With a careful landing. Well, with a landing. And that's the first mission done. And that was actually quite easy, and I've got to say, a damn sight more fun than just grinding these things out with the Raiju. So over to the Akula, which is a much more modern version. I believe this is actually based on the Comanche, which was supposed to be a replacement for the Apache, but I believe it was scrapped because drones started to become used instead. So this also has a choice between homing rockets and barrage rockets, but there's an important difference. Well, there are two important differences between the two. First of all, with the Hunter, you can switch between them while you're going, so you can do a little bit with homing rockets, which are much more accurate and much more useful, or you can just press square on the PlayStation to switch to barrage, which are arguably less useful but a lot more fun. Whereas on this, you have to specify which one you want when you build your actual helicopter. So you have to choose at the point of buying and configuring whether you want homing or barrage, which I'm not that keen on. I'd rather be able to switch between them. But I can see how they were trying to make sure this thing wasn't overpowered. The second important difference is that the barrage rockets on the Akula only shoot 4 at a time, where on the Hunter they shoot 7 at a time. So the ones on the Hunter are significantly better. Now, just like the Hunter, this actually has nice handling. It's much more controllable than the Hunter. It actually feels a little bit heavier, but not in a bad way. Not in the way that some of the vehicles that we'll come back to later feel really, really heavy and difficult to control. So this, in general, is a much nicer thing to fly. But we haven't got to its standout feature just yet. This is also a 4-seater, which makes it much more useful if you're grinding with friends. Anyway, let's deal some death. So the site cleaned out, all that remains to do now is to find the narcotics.
Where are they?
And again, we'll get the hell out of Dodge. And this is where the Akula's standout feature really comes into play. And that is stealth mode. If you press right on your D-pad while you're flying this thing, you'll notice the weapons undercarriage underneath will retract and you will be in stealth mode. So if you're using this for cargo sourcing, as soon as you've collected it, no one will be able to see you or where you are. So that makes this really, really useful for grinding those sorts of missions out. And yes, I know the Raiju has all the same features, and it also has the explosive cannon, and it's also quicker and a little bit easier. But I tell you what, doing these two source missions in these two helicopters was a hell of a lot more fun than it ever was doing them in the Raiju. So I definitely recommend that you try it. So which one would I buy? Well, the different tools for different jobs. The Hunter is definitely better for PvP and combat if you can get used to the barrage missiles. Whereas the Akula is much better for sourcing missions, especially if you're doing them in public sessions with a team. That stealth mode just makes it so incredibly useful because it's so much utility, it's incredible. So which one would I recommend buying? Well, in some ways neither. I'd buy the helicopter that clears sights out like this. And that's the Savage. So my recommendation isn't that if you want one of these two you should buy the Savage. You should definitely buy the Savage anyway. But if you want one of these two and can't decide which one, think about how you're playing. If you're wanting something that's going to help you in PvP and just messing about and just having a bit of a fun in the session, then the Hunter's definitely the more fun and best for PvP. Whereas the Akula, that's going to be very useful for missions and for grinding. And they're both on a fabulous offer this week. So I hope that was useful. Please do remember, if you like this sort of stuff, please drop a like and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next one.